The morning I turned 17 should have been different. I remember waking up with that naive excitement, thinking maybe this year they'd remember. Maybe there'd be a card on the kitchen table, or Mom would make those pancakes she used to make when I was little, back when she still looked at me like I mattered. Instead, I woke to silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence that wraps around you like a blanket on Sunday mornings. This was different. Heavy. Wrong. The house felt hollow, like all the air had been sucked out through the windows while I slept. Mom? My voice cracked as I padded down the hallway in my worn pajamas. The floorboards creaked under my feet, a sound that usually annoyed Dad when he was trying to watch television. But there was no television humming. No coffee brewing. No shower running. The kitchen was empty. Not just of people, of everything that made it ours. The coffee maker Mom couldn't start her day without. Dad's collection of baseball caps that always hung by the door. Even the magnetic poetry on the fridge that my little brother Marcus used to arrange into stupid jokes. My heart hammered against my ribs as I ran to the living room. The television was gone. The couch remained, but the family photos that lined the mantel had vanished. It was like someone had surgically removed every trace that we were ever a family. Then I saw it. A single piece of paper on the coffee table, held down by Mom's house key. My hands shook as I picked it up. 4 words in Mom's careful handwriting. You'll figure it out. That was it. No explanation. No goodbye. No, we're sorry, or we had no choice, or even we'll be back. Just 4 words that sliced through 17 years of my life like it meant nothing. I must have read that note 50 times, thinking maybe I was missing something. Maybe there was invisible ink, or maybe this was some elaborate birthday surprise. But deep down, in that place where you know things before your brain catches up, I understood. They were gone. My parents, my brother, they'd packed up their lives and left me behind like I was furniture they didn't want to move. The room spun. I sank onto the couch, still clutching that note, like somehow holding it tighter would change the words. My phone. I needed my phone. I scrambled to find it, nearly dropping it twice as I dialed Mom's number. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. Dad's phone. Same message. Marcus. Surely Marcus wouldn't. The number you have dialed is no longer in service. They'd planned this, canceled their phones, packed strategically while I was at school yesterday, taking only what mattered to them, and I wasn't on that list. The next 3 days blurred together in a haze of disbelief and dwindling hope. I told myself they'd come back. Maybe they'd had to leave suddenly, witness protection, or Dad's gambling debts finally caught up, or something. Anything that made sense. I rationed the food in the fridge, slept on the couch because walking past their empty bedrooms made me want to scream, and jumped every time a car drove past, certain it would be them. By day 4, reality crashed in with the landlord. Rent's due, Mr. Peterson said, his thick frame filling the doorway. His eyes scanned the nearly empty living room behind me. Where are your parents? They had to leave town. Family emergency. The lie tasted bitter. They'll be back soon, he snorted. Kid, I wasn't born yesterday. I saw them loading up that U-Haul 3 days ago. Rent's $800. Due now, or you're out by tomorrow. $800. I had $43.17 in my drawer upstairs. My part-time job at the grocery store paid minimum wage, and my next shift wasn't until Saturday. Please, Mr. Peterson. I just need a few days. Not my problem. Your parents signed the lease, not you. No money tomorrow, I'm changing the locks. The door slammed in my face. That night, I didn't sleep. I packed everything I could fit into my school backpack and an old duffel bag I found in the garage. Clothes, toiletries, the $20 emergency cash I found taped under Mom's old jewelry box. And that note, I don't know why I kept it. Maybe as evidence that I hadn't imagined it all. That once upon a time, I'd had a family who cared enough to leave me 4 words. I spent my last night in that house writing lists. Friends I could maybe stay with. Teachers who might help. Places that were open 24 hours. How many meals I could stretch $43 into. How many days until my next paycheck. The math never worked out in my favor. Morning came too soon. I sat on the front steps with my bags, watching Mr. Peterson change the locks while neighbors pretended not to notice. Mrs. Chen from next door wouldn't meet my eyes. She'd made cookies with Mom just last month. Where are you gonna go? Mr. Peterson asked, not unkindly. For a moment, I thought he might relent. I'll figure it out, I said, echoing my mother's words. He nodded, handed me an envelope. Your parents left this. Said to give it to you if you asked about them. My heart leaped. Maybe this was it, the explanation, the apology, the address where I could find them. I tore it open. Inside was my birth certificate, my social security card, and immunization records. The documents you'd need to prove you existed. Nothing else. The message was clear. You're on your own, but here's the paperwork to make it legal. Lisa Brennan's couch lasted exactly 1 week. We'd been friends since middle school, and when I showed up at her door with my bags and my story, she'd immediately said yes. Her parents, however, had other ideas. It's not that we don't want to help, Alina, Mrs. Brennan said, unable to look me in the eye, but we're not equipped for this situation. There are programs, resources, people who are trained for homeless youth. Homeless youth, that's what I was now. A category, a statistic. Mom, Lisa protested. She's not some random person. She's my best friend. And she can still be your friend. But she can't live here. I'm sorry, sweetie, it's just too much liability. Liability. That's what I'd become. A risk too great for suburban families with two-car garages and proper parents who didn't abandon their children. The shelter was my next stop. I'd Googled it on Lisa's phone before I left, memorizing the address. The Helping Hands Youth Center, it was called. The name sounded hopeful. The reality was anything but. You're 17? The intake coordinator looked skeptical. Without parental consent, we need to contact child services. They'll determine placement. Placement? Foster care, most likely. Though at your age, it's usually a group home. I'd heard stories about group homes. Kids at school whispered about them like they were horror movies come to life. Fighting for everything. Stuff stolen. Worse things that nobody talked about directly. What if I don't want that? She shrugged. Then you can't stay here. We have legal obligations. So I left. Spent that night in a 24-hour laundromat, dozed off sitting up against the warm dryers until the owner kicked me out at dawn. The next night was a park bench until the cops moved me along. Then, behind a grocery store, huddled between dumpsters that smelled like rotting vegetables but blocked the wind. A week into homelessness, I learned the rules. McDonald's bathrooms were good for washing up if you bought something small first. Libraries were safe during the day and had free Wi-Fi. Looking clean and keeping your head down meant fewer questions. And never, ever cry in public. Crying marked you as a victim, and victims attracted the wrong kind of attention. My job at the grocery store became my lifeline. 8 hours where I was normal, where I had a purpose, where customers called me miss and my manager told me I was doing good work. I picked up every shift I could, volunteered for overtime, anything to stretch my paycheck and avoid the streets for a few more hours. You okay, Alina? My coworker, Derek, asked one evening as I restocked shelves. You've been here since open. Just need the money, I said, focusing on aligning soup cans. Yeah, but you're here like every day. Don't you have school? School. I'd missed a week already. Soon they'd call my parents. Except my parents wouldn't answer because my parents had evaporated into thin air, leaving nothing but a note and legal documents. I graduated early, I lied. Derek didn't look convinced, but he didn't push. That's another thing I learned people don't really want to know. They want to feel like they asked, but they don't want the messy truth. The truth makes them uncomfortable, makes them feel guilty about their warm beds and full refrigerators and parents who might be annoying but at least existed. 3 weeks into my new reality, everything changed because of a spilled coffee and a woman named Catherine Walsh. I was sitting in my usual spot at the library, using their computer to apply for second jobs, when exhaustion finally won. I dozed off, my head on my arms, and knocked over someone's coffee. The brown liquid spread across the table, soaking into my only clean shirt and the stranger's leather portfolio. I'm so sorry. I jumped up, grabbing napkins from my backpack, my hands shaking. I'll pay for the cleaning. It's fine. The woman's voice was calm, measured. She was in her 50s, with silver hair pulled into an elegant bun and clothes that probably cost more than I'd ever made. Accidents happen. But as I frantically wiped at the coffee, my sleeve rode up, revealing the bruises on my arm from sleeping on concrete. Her eyes tracked the movement, took in my overstuffed backpack, the dark circles under my eyes, the way I clutched my belongings like someone might steal them. When's the last time you ate a real meal? She asked quietly. My automatic "I'm fine" died on my lips. Something about her tone wasn't pitying or condescending, it was just knowing. Tuesday, I admitted, 3 days ago. Come on, she packed up her portfolio. There's a diner around the corner. We're going to eat. And you're going to tell me why a 17-year-old is sleeping in the library. I should have been suspicious. Should have run. But hunger and exhaustion won. And an hour later, I was telling Catherine Walsh everything over a plate of eggs and bacon that tasted like heaven. So they just left, she said when I finished. No warning, no explanation beyond 4 words. I nodded, unable to speak around the lump in my throat. Catherine was quiet for a long moment. Then, I have a proposition. I own a business consulting firm. We need someone to do basic admin work, filing, answering phones, data entry, nothing glamorous. The pay is $15 an hour, and there's a small apartment above the office. It's not much, just a studio. But it's warm and safe. In exchange, you finish high school. Non-negotiable. I'll help you get enrolled in an online program. You work part-time while you study, full-time once you graduate. Deal? I stared at her. Why would you do this? You don't even know me. Because 25 years ago, I was you. Different circumstances, same result. Someone helped me then. Consider this paying it forward. She pulled out a business card. The offer's real. But you need to decide now. I'm not going to chase you. Yes. The word tumbled out before I could second-guess it. Yes. Please. I'll work hard, I promise. I won't let you down. I know you won't. She stood, placing money on the table. Come on. Let's get you settled. The apartment was tiny, maybe 300 square feet, but it was mine. A bed with actual sheets, a bathroom with a door that locked, a kitchenette with a mini fridge that hummed. I sat on the floor and cried for an hour, not from sadness but from relief. I had a chance, a real chance. That night, I pulled out the note my parents left. "You'll figure it out." I'd spent weeks hating those words, but sitting in my tiny apartment, with a job starting tomorrow and a path forward, I realized something. They were right. I would figure it out. Not because of them, but in spite of them. The next 5 years were a masterclass in survival and transformation. Catherine wasn't just a boss. She became my mentor, though she was careful to maintain professional boundaries. She taught me business, yes, but more than that, she taught me how to think strategically, how to see opportunities where others saw obstacles. I finished high school online in 18 months, pouring myself into studies with an intensity that surprised even me. Every A was a tiny rebellion against parents who deemed me not worth keeping. I enrolled in community college for business administration, taking night classes while working full-time at Catherine's firm. The small apartment above the office became my sanctuary, my launching pad. Catherine's company consulted for startups, helping them streamline operations and scale efficiently. I absorbed everything, sitting in on meetings, taking notes, studying business models after hours. By my second year, I was contributing ideas. By my third, I was leading small projects. "You have a gift," Catherine told me after I'd helped a client reduce their operational costs by 30%. "You see patterns others miss." The pattern I saw most clearly was this. Businesses failed when they ignored their foundation. They'd chase growth without solidifying their base, expand without understanding their core value. Kind of like parents who'd build a family and then abandon it when it got inconvenient. At 22, I had a bachelor's degree, zero debt thanks to working multiple jobs and scholarships, and enough saved to start something of my own. Catherine offered to make me a partner in her firm, but I knew I needed to build something from nothing. To prove to myself that I could create what my parents had destroyed, something lasting. The idea came from my own experience. How many 17-year-olds ended up on the streets with no idea how to survive? How many aged out of foster care with no practical skills? I created an app called Lifelink, a platform connecting youth in crisis with resources, mentorship, and emergency support. Not charity, but empowerment. Teaching kids what their parents should have. How to budget, find housing, ace job interviews, build credit. Catherine was my first investor. "I know a good bet when I see one," she said, writing a check for $50,000. "But more importantly, I know a survivor when I see one." The first year was brutal. 18-hour days, ramen noodles, and anxiety attacks. Pitching to investors who didn't see the profit in helping homeless kids. But slowly, it gained traction. A feature in TechCrunch. A partnership with a major nonprofit. By year 2, we had 100,000 users and our first million in revenue. I hired carefully people who understood struggle, who'd climbed out of their own holes. Derek from the grocery store became my head of operations. He'd been watching out for me all along, he admitted, sneaking extra food into my bags when I wasn't looking during those homeless weeks. By 25, Lifelink was valued at $10 million. We'd helped 50,000 kids find stability. I was invited to speak at conferences, featured in Forbes' 30 Under 30. The girl with nothing had built something extraordinary. But late at night, in my nice apartment with its furniture that no one would ever suddenly remove, I still kept that note in my nightstand drawer. "You'll figure it out." 4 words that had broken me and built me in equal measure. Success, I learned, is the best revenge you never asked for. By 29, I'd sold Lifelink to a major tech company for $40 million, staying on as CEO with full autonomy. The kid who'd slept behind dumpsters was now running board meetings and being interviewed by major media outlets about breaking cycles of poverty. I bought a house. Nothing ostentatious, I'd learned to live simply, but it was mine. With no landlord to change the locks. I established the Walsh Foundation, named after Catherine, who'd passed away from cancer 2 years prior, leaving me her entire business. The foundation provided emergency housing and support for abandoned youth. Every kid we helped was a small victory against the people who'd taught me that family was conditional. Then, on a random Tuesday that started like any other, my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. "Alina?" The voice was older, rougher, but unmistakable. "It's Marcus, my baby brother." Except he wasn't a baby anymore. He'd be 25 now. I white-knuckled my phone, 1,000 questions and accusations fighting to escape. "How did you get this number?" I saw an article. "About your company, your foundation." "Alina, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know what they did to you." "You were 13, Marcus. You knew we were packing. You knew you were leaving. They told me you were going to live with Dad's sister in Portland. They said you wanted to finish school there, that it was all arranged. I tried to call you, but they said you needed space to adjust. By the time I realized they were lying, I was 15 and they'd convinced me you hated us for some big fight I wasn't part of." My laugh was bitter. "What fight? There was no fight. There was nothing." I woke up on my 17th birthday to an empty house and a forward note. Silence stretched between us. Then, quietly, Your birthday. God, Alina, that's evil. What do you want, Marcus? To apologize, to explain, I don't know, you're my sister. I've spent 10 years thinking you abandoned us, and 2 years knowing the truth and being too much of a coward to reach out. Where are they? I had to know. Phoenix. They're not doing well, Alina. Dad's had some failed businesses. Mom's working 2 jobs. They saw the article too. They want— No, the word came out sharp enough to cut. Whatever they want, the answer is no. Will you at least meet me? Just me? Please. I need to look you in the eye and apologize properly. I agreed, against my better judgment. We met at a coffee shop downtown, neutral territory. Marcus looked like Dad, same dark hair, same broad shoulders, but his eyes held a gentleness our fathers never had. I hired a private investigator, he said after we'd sat in awkward silence, when I turned 18. To find out what really happened. He found the eviction notice, your high school records showing you dropped out, hospital records from when you got pneumonia living on the streets. Hospital records? I didn't remember any hospital. You were brought in unconscious from the shelter on Vine Street. Severe pneumonia. You discharged yourself against medical advice after 2 days. The shelter. Right. Those weeks were hazy, punctuated by a fever I'd convinced myself was just exhaustion. They never mentioned you, Marcus continued. Not once in 6 years. Then that article came out, and suddenly they're talking about their successful daughter like they had something to do with it. It made me sick. Marcus and I met weekly for 2 months before he dropped the bomb. They're being evicted, he said over coffee. Dad owes about $80,000 in various debts. Mom's had 3 jobs this year and can't keep any of them. They're 60 days from homeless. Karma's a bitch, I said, but the words felt hollow. I'd fantasized about their downfall for years, but the reality just made me tired. They want to see you. Of course they do. Alina. Let me guess. They're sorry. They made a mistake. They were going through something I couldn't understand. They thought they were doing what was best for me. I'd imagined this conversation so many times I could script it. Marcus winced. Actually, no. They think you owe them. I nearly choked on my coffee. Excuse me? Their logic is that leaving you made you strong. That you wouldn't have become successful if they'd coddled you. So really, they did you a favor. The rage that erupted in my chest was volcanic. 12 years of carefully controlled anger threatened to consume everything I'd built. My hands shook as I set down my cup. They abandoned me. On my birthday. With nothing but a note. I nearly died, Marcus, multiple times. I ate from dumpsters. I slept in places that I stopped, unable to continue. I know. God, I know. That's why I'm warning you. They're going to contact you. Dad got your office address somehow. Just be prepared. He was right. The next day, a letter arrived at my office. Mom's handwriting. Same as that note 12 years ago, but pages longer. I read it once, then had my assistant shred it. It was exactly what I'd expected revisionist history, where they were the misunderstood heroes of my success story. The letters came daily for a week, then emails to my business address. Then they showed up. I was walking to my car after a late meeting when I saw them. Older, grayer, but unmistakably them. Mom had lost weight, her face gaunt. Dad looked deflated, his former swagger replaced by desperation. Alina. Mom stepped forward. I stepped back. You need to leave. Now. 5 minutes, Dad said. We drove 18 hours. Just give us 5 minutes. You gave me 4 words. You don't get 5 minutes. We're your parents, Mom said, tears streaming down her face. Doesn't that mean anything? It meant everything. To me. That's why it destroyed me when you left. Now you're just strangers who happen to share my DNA. We need help, Dad said bluntly. We're drowning. You have more money than you could spend in 10 lifetimes. Help us. Why would I do that? Because we raised you for 17 years. And then you abandoned me. Consider us even. I got in my car and drove away, watching them shrink in my rearview mirror. But I knew this wasn't over. People who could abandon their child wouldn't accept no for an answer when desperation came calling. The harassment started small. More letters. Now sent to my home address they'd somehow obtained. Voice messages on my personal phone from numbers I didn't recognize. They'd tell their sob story to anyone who'd listen. And enough people listened that my phone never stopped ringing. Then it escalated. They contacted my board members, spinning a tale of a daughter who'd abandoned her family in their time of need. They reached out to journalists, trying to sell a story of an ungrateful child who'd forgotten where she came from. They posted on social media, careful to paint themselves as loving parents who'd made hard choices for their daughter's benefit. My lawyers sent cease and desist letters. They ignored them. The breaking point came when they contacted the kids in my foundation's programs, telling them I was a hypocrite, that I pretended to care about abandoned youth while abandoning my own family. 3 kids left the program, convinced I was a fraud. We're filing a restraining order, my lawyer, James, said. This is harassment, defamation, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. They'll fight it. Let them. We have documentation of everything. The court hearing was the first time I'd been in the same room as them in months. They'd hired a lawyer, somehow probably promised him a cut of whatever they could extract from me. Their argument was that I'd promised to help them. that we'd had verbal agreements. All lies, but they sold it with conviction. I took the stand and told my story. The empty house. The note. The nights on the street. The hospital I didn't remember. I pulled out the note, the one I'd kept all these years, and submitted it as evidence. This is what they left me, I said, my voice steady despite 12 years of pain fighting to escape. 4 words. No money. No explanation. No forwarding address. I was 17 years old. My father actually had the audacity to argue that the note showed they believed in my capability. The judge, a woman in her 60s with sharp eyes, looked at him like he'd grown a second head. Mr. Rosen, she said slowly, are you seriously arguing that abandoning a minor child is good parenting? The restraining order was granted. They were ordered to cease all contact with me, my business, and anyone associated with my foundation. As we left the courthouse, Mom called out, "We're still your parents. You can't change that." "You're right," I said, not turning around. "I can't change that you're my biological parents. But you chose not to be my family. That's on you." But even restraining orders couldn't stop the damage they'd already done. My inbox was full of messages from people calling me heartless. A few corporate sponsors pulled out of the foundation, not wanting to be associated with the controversy. My story of triumph had become a messy family drama, played out in public. Marcus was caught in the middle, torn between the sister he'd lost and found and the parents who'd raised him. "They're living in their car," he told me one day. "I offered to help, but they want it from you, only you. Then they'll be waiting forever." 6 months after the restraining order, things had finally calmed down. The foundation had recovered, with new sponsors who appreciated our stance on boundaries and accountability. I'd started therapy, something I should have done years ago, and was working through the complex grief of losing parents who were still alive. Then Marcus called at 2 a.m. "Dad's in the hospital," he said. "Heart attack." "It's bad, Alina. Really bad." I sat in the dark, phone in hand, feeling nothing and everything at once. Okay, that's it? What do you want me to say, Marcus?" "I don't know, something, anything, he's dying." "We all die." "Jesus, Alina. When did you become so cold?" "When I was 17. "You know exactly when." "But I wasn't cold. I was protected." "There's a difference." "I didn't go to the hospital. Dad survived barely. The medical bills destroyed whatever financial stability they'd managed to cobble together. Mom called from different phones, leaving voicemails about medical costs and insurance gaps. I had my assistant block each number and delete the messages unheard. 3 months later, Marcus asked to meet. He looked exhausted, older than his 26 years. "I'm done being in the middle," he said. "I love you. I love them. But I can't keep trying to bridge this gap. It's killing me. I never asked you to." "No, but I felt like I had to. Like if I tried hard enough, I could fix this. Make us a family again." "We were never a family, Marcus. We were people who lived in the same house until it became inconvenient." "That's not true. We were a family. A fucked up one that made an unforgivable choice. But we were real once." "I remember." "You remember wrong." He pulled out his phone, showed me a photo. It was my 15th birthday. We were all there, laughing over a cake Mom had made. Dad's arm was around my shoulders. Marcus was making bunny ears behind my head. We looked happy. We looked like a family. "This was 2 years before they left," Marcus said. "What happened? What changed?" I'd asked myself the same question 1,000 times. The truth was, I didn't know. There was no fight, no catalyst I could point to. One day I was their daughter, the next I was disposable. Maybe that was worse than having a reason. "I need to tell you something," Marcus said. "I've been seeing a therapist, working through my own stuff about this." She said something that stuck with me. "Sometimes people are so broken themselves they break everyone around them. It doesn't excuse it, but it explains it. Mom and Dad aren't broken. They're selfish. They're both, Alina. Dad's father abandoned him when he was 10. Mom's mother was an alcoholic who chose bottles over her kids. They repeated patterns they swore they'd never repeat. And that's supposed to make me feel better? No, it's supposed to help you understand that this was never about you. You didn't do anything wrong. You weren't too much or not enough. You were just a kid caught in their dysfunction." The final confrontation came on a Thursday afternoon, exactly 12 years after they'd left. I was having lunch alone, reviewing contracts, when they walked into the restaurant. Older, frailer, but still them. They sat down at my table before I could react. "We're not here for money," Mom said quickly. "Or forgiveness. We just need to say something." I could have called security. Should have. But something in her voice made me pause. "You have 2 minutes." Dad spoke first. "We were cowards. Broken, selfish cowards. We convinced ourselves that you were strong enough to survive without us. That we were holding you back. That you'd be better off. We were drowning," Mom added. "Financially, emotionally, mentally. And instead of asking for help, we ran. We abandoned you because we couldn't face our own failures as parents. And you think admitting this changes something?" "No," Dad said. "Nothing changes what we did. But you deserve to know it was never about you. You were the best thing we ever did, and we threw you away because we didn't know how to be the parents you deserved. We followed your success," Mom said, tears streaming. "Every article, Every interview. We told ourselves we did the right thing because look how well you turned out. But that's bullshit. You succeeded despite us, not because of us. What do you want from me? Nothing, Mom said. We wanted to look you in the eye and take responsibility. No excuses. No justifications. We failed you in the worst way parents can fail a child. We're leaving the state, Dad added. Moving to Florida to live with my brother. We won't contact you again. But we needed you to hear this. To know that every success you've had, every life you've changed through your foundation, that's all you. We gave you nothing but trauma, and you turned it into purpose. They stood to leave. Mom hesitated, then placed something on the table. It was a small box. Your grandmother's ring, she said. She died 5 years ago. She left it to you. We should have sent it sooner, but we're cowards, remember? They walked out, leaving me with a ring from a grandmother I'd never really known and the strangest sensation, not quite closure, not quite peace, but something in between. That night, I called Marcus. They came to see me. I know, they told me they were going to. How do you feel? I don't know, empty? Full? Both? Yeah, that sounds about right. I looked at the ring, a simple gold band with a small sapphire. Do you think I'll ever forgive them? I don't know, do you need to? No, I realized. I don't. I need to forgive myself for all the years I thought I was the problem. But them? They have to live with their choices. I just have to live with the consequences. Marcus was quiet for a moment. For what it's worth, I'm proud of you. Not for the success or the money, for surviving. For refusing to repeat their patterns. For building something from nothing but spite and determination. And a note, I added. Don't forget the note. You'll figure it out, Marcus quoted. I did, didn't I? Yeah, sis, you really did. I kept the ring but pawned it a week later, donating the money to the foundation. It felt right taking something from my past and turning it into someone else's future. That's what survival looks like sometimes. Not forgetting where you came from, but refusing to let it define where you're going. The note still sits in my drawer, not as a reminder of abandonment, but as proof of resilience. 4 words that broke a 17-year-old girl and forged a woman who refuses to break others. They were right about one thing. I figured it out. But they'll never be part of the equation again.